Thank you so much, Matt. James could not make it this morning. He's been feeling a bit under the weather. He couldn't report to the game last night as our usual station manager, but thanks so much, as always, to Matt Jansen for subbing in and being the Swiss Army knife that KSST always needs. So thank you so much, Matt, and hope you're feeling better soon, James. But we've got a lot to discuss here. All sports right here in Sulphur Springs and collegiate. But let's start with the collegiate football, as we are in, I guess you would consider this week 3 of college football, or perhaps week 2, as some teams got underway 2 weeks ago in what you could consider week 0. But let's get underway with college football. So the first game up is an anniversary of the game of the century between the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the University of Oklahoma, two fierce rivals going back to their days in the Big 8, and the first time these two teams have played since the 2010 season when both teams met in Nebraska's last Big 12 championship appearance in 2010. So it should be a hotly contested matchup. It's celebrating the anniversary of the game 50 years ago when both teams came into the game top ranked in what was deemed one of the several games in the 20th century, the game of the century. Who knows if it'll be something similar today this morning, though, as that game is scheduled to kick off at 11 a.m. But the University of Oklahoma currently favored by 23. So not exactly sure we're getting the exact same number 1 versus number 2 matchup we got 50 years ago, but hopefully Nebraska can get up under Coach Scott Frost, and if they could somehow pull out the win versus the number 3 ranked Sooners, that would be the, no doubt, marquee win in the Scott Frost era at Nebraska. So should be a good game. That'll air at 11 a.m. on Fox. Next game up, also at 11 a.m., are the Texas A&M Aggies. Like the Oklahoma Sooners, the Aggies are a top 10 program right now, sitting pretty at number 7, and are hosting the University of New Mexico Lobos. The UNM comes into the game 2-0, and that game will be on the SEC network at 11 a.m. as A&M continues its crusade towards a potential SEC championship this season. But again, as I mentioned previously, they will have to get past the big programs like the University of Alabama, LSU, which has given A&M some issues since A&M joined the SEC in 2012, and then of course the University of Alabama, and to a lesser extent the University of Auburn. So a lot of tough games for the Aggies coming up in SEC play, but for now they'll focus on getting past the University of New Mexico at 11 a.m. That game is on the SEC network. The big game at 2:30 p.m. will be two SEC teams playing in their first SEC contest. Pretty surprising that we are already in, I guess you consider this week 2, week 3, and we've already got some conference play, and I'll have another conference game up later. But yeah, the University of Alabama is taking a trip to the University of Florida to play the Gators. The Gators coming to the game number 11 overall, 2-0 to start the season, and same with the University of Alabama, 2-0, but the Crimson Tide coming to this game number 1 overall, and up to this point have looked about as dominant as they did last season when they won a national championship versus Ohio State. I'm sorry, the Ohio State University. But University of Alabama just looking to get through Florida today and what could be a potential matchup between two teams that may be in the SEC championship later this fall in Atlanta. But for now, it should be a great contest between the University of Alabama and Florida in the Swamp today at 2:30 p.m. And being an SEC game and in a marquee SEC matchup, that game will be on CBS, and the University of Alabama is currently favored by 2 touchdowns. Then moving over to the next time slot at 2:30 p.m., we've got the SMU Mustangs, who will be playing at Louisiana Tech today. Louisiana Tech comes into the game 1-1. The Mustangs 2-0 to start the season. A hot start, just like last season, and they'll look to keep it going tonight or later today versus Louisiana Tech and the Bulldogs, as the Mustangs looking to no doubt get potentially their best season in a long, long time, since potentially the 80s, if they can potentially get all the way to the American Athletic Conference Championship, something they fell just short of last season. So no doubt they've got their eyes set on their first conference championship since the 1980s, before the Mustangs got the death penalty. So team to follow this season, definitely the Mustangs. At 2:30 p.m. we've got another conference matchup, as I mentioned earlier, but this one will be 2 Big 12 teams, the University of Baylor University, and Kansas. The Bears will be in Lawrence later today at 2:30 p.m. And Baylor comes in the game 2-0 and looking to get their first conference win versus Kansas tonight. Should be a good game between head coach Dave Aranda in his second year at Baylor and the Kansas Jayhawks, who got their first win in several years last week. So should be a good game between two Big 12 teams. And then moving over to just a little bit later at 3 p.m., the University of Arkansas, after thrashing the University of Texas at Austin in Fayetteville last weekend, are number 20 in the nation and 2-0, and we'll be looking to avoid a potential letdown versus Georgia Southern when they come to town today at 3 p.m. Georgia Southern is 1-1, and the Razorbacks are favored big right now at 23. And that game, again, at 3 p.m. will be on the SEC Network. And then moving over to the 6 p.m. time slot, the Texas Tech Red Raiders are 2-0 to start their season and will be hosting the Florida International University Panthers. And that should be a good game at 6 p.m. The Red Raiders currently favored by 20. The University of Houston will be hosting Grambling in Houston. That should be a good game. Houston's favored big right now by 40.5. That game is at 6 p.m. on ESPN+. And Texas Tech, I failed to mention, their game is also on ESPN+. Then the last few games I've got time to mention for college football are the LSU Tigers hosting Central Michigan, and still kind of reeling from their loss 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles to UCLA, and no doubt hoping to get the bounce-back win versus Central Michigan. Ed Orgeron and his team are favored by 19.5 versus Central Michigan. And then I mentioned earlier, Texas got thrashed last weekend versus Arkansas, and they'll be hoping for the bounce-back win versus Rice today. The Owls coming to the game today 0-2, and Texas favored big right now by 26 at the time of this. And Casey Thompson will be starting at quarterback for Texas after Hudson Card fell flat, leading the offense last Friday in Fayetteville. Longhorns currently favored by 26, and that game will be at 7 p.m. on the Longhorn Network. The last game I have time to mention is for all those Pac-12 After Dark fans who like to stay up until 9 a.m. watching college football, myself included. Arizona State University will be in Provo tonight playing the BYU Cougars. Both teams currently top 25, Arizona State at number 19, BYU at number 23, and both teams 2-0 to start the season. Should be a great game tonight, and that will cap a great day of festivities at 9:15 p.m. on ESPN. That's all the college football I've got for you this week, but let's talk about Wildcat and Lady Cat sports. So volleyball, as always, has been busy playing in two games, first on Tuesday, then on Friday. On Tuesday, they had a very intense 5-set thriller with the Texas High Lady Tigers. The Coach Bailey Dorner squad fell behind 2-0 in sets to start the game, but don't get it twisted because they were in incredibly close set losses at 25-20 and 25-22. And the Lady Cats volleyball team were able to win sets 3 and 4 before a sluggish start in set 5 ultimately proved to be their undoing in a loss, in their first district loss. It dropped them to 15-11 and 1-1. Last night, however, they did not have those issues as another tight game. But and they would go on to lose the first set versus the Marshall Lady Mavs at home last night after having a nice lead. But sets 2 and 3 were won by Sulphur Springs 26-24 and 25-23 to give Coach Dorner's team a 2-1 set lead. And the fourth set showed the team's character and tenacity, even though they trailed by 9, and they came back to win set 4 26-24, and thus the match 3-1. The win gives the Lady Cats volleyball team a 16-11 overall record and 2-1 in district. And next up, the Lady Cats volleyball team will be in Pine Tree on Tuesday, taking on the Pirates. And then another team I should mention is cross country. Cross country on yesterday actually were in Pine Tree at the Pine Tree Mike Darby Invitational and had a pretty good outing yesterday. And a much improvement over last Friday's efforts in Hallsville. And great effort, no doubt. The men and women both placed in the top 5, so a great effort. And even though the men were down on varsity runners, so great job to Coach Ross Hicks and both his Wildcats and Lady Cats teams for a great effort yesterday at the Pine Tree Invitational. Tennis was in kind of a de facto play-in-playoff game on Tuesday versus the Pine Tree Pirates, and that was something Coach Tony Martinez has been talking about for weeks. taking on Pine Tree and how that would kind of be a play-in game. And failed to mention for the cross-country team, going back to them, that yesterday they were in Pine Tree at the Mike Darby Invitational, and next Saturday they will be hosting their first ever Sulphur Springs Invitational at the athletic complex. And I know Coach Ross Hicks and his team are all too excited to be running that course for the first time in Sulphur Springs, and to kind of have a leg up on their competition as a result. And then last thing I want to mention before we go to a commercial break and hear from Coach Owens about any of these teams and moving forward about the game last night was the middle school teams. The junior high football program started their football season opener versus the Pine Tree Pirates with victories for both A and B teams. And next up they'll be versus Hallsville on Tuesday right here at Gerald Prim Stadium. So that's about all I've got in the week in review for Wildcat and Lady Cat sports. When we return from a commercial break, we'll hear some comments from Coach Owens and then move over to last night's game, homecoming versus the Crandall Pirates. So before we move over to talking about last night's homecoming match versus the Crandall Pirates, joining us this week is Wildcats football head coach and athletic director Greg Owens. Coach Owens, would you care to comment on week in review?
Sure. Yeah, it was a good week for the volleyball team and almost a great week. It was a very spirited match with Texas High, and that they did a great job. Just came up just a little bit short in that one. And then last night they got after Marshall. Really good, started over, and then we kind of went flat and then had to come back and rebound. Did a great job doing that and moving into district now. They're 2-1 in district play, so that's good for them, and they're moving forward with their goals. And Ross Hicks shared with me yesterday too, said, and I talked to some of the runners too yesterday, and they all said that was my personal best. So some of them had their personal best on that side, and so a lot of district competition was there, so they got a little taste of seeing what's happening with district foes, and so they're getting geared up for their stuff. And the big thing is Ross is juiced up for hosting his first meet, and I think the first ever we've hosted at Sulphur Springs cross-country meet. So we think we got it ready. He's putting dirt in holes this morning, trying to smooth off part of the course, and so he's already up working. So that's good. We're excited to see that. So I think it'll bring some more excitement for our kiddos and our community. So we'll pull that off next Saturday. And then, sorry I was late this morning. I've been fixing PA at the Prim, so we got 7th grade football going over there right now, and they're getting geared up and followed that today. If you want to see a bunch of football, we got Pee Wee football from 9 to 7 following that. So it's a full day at the Prim. And I don't want to leave out team tennis. Coach Martinez, great job defeating Pine Tree. So puts them in opportunity to be in the playoffs. So they're pumped about that opportunity and got a chance to even advance even more now as we play. I'm trying to remember. I think Hallsville. I think our next big match is with Hallsville with those guys. So it's a good week. Wish it was a better week for the football right now, but it wasn't. So it was a tough one for us last night. But everybody's getting after it. Kids are giving a great effort, and a lot of good stuff's going on.
And before we move over to football, I wanted to ask you real quick, because you're exactly right. This is the first cross-country meet hosted here in Sulphur Springs. How did that come to be? Did Coach Hicks come to you and say, I want to host an invitational here?
Well, since he's been here, he's been wanting to do that. Where do we do it? How do we do it? Do we see if we can have it at the golf course? Do we for a while, we spent about 3 or 4 years ago, we spent some time on the property behind the middle school, trying to make that a course back there. It was just too rough, too many obstacles and stuff that we're dealing with over there. So we worked at it, and then it just didn't work out. So then finally said, hey, we're going to make this happen. So he got out on his bicycle, charted his course, and it kind of turned out. It's worked out. And so we got our mowers out, and we've kind of mowed a course, and he's kind of kept that going for about the last month and a half. And their kids have been running on it. And so he felt good. But you got to get people to commit to come, too. So he's trying to get good competition to get people here. And it's falling in line, so it's gonna work. I mean, we'll have a high school division, we'll have a junior high division too, so they'll run after that. So it'll be high school kids and junior high kids, and so he's excited about it. He loves it. If you want to do that kind of stuff, you got to have a passion for it, because it just doesn't happen. Somebody just can't roll out there. So he's got a passion for running. He's got a passion for wanting to host a meet. So that's what we're going to do, and it's going to work, and it'll be good, and hopefully it'll be just build, and this will be the first annual, and we can keep stacking on to that.
Yeah, and something I talked about with Coach Hicks earlier in the season is he was talking about the Commerce Invitational, and he said in years past, it wasn't a very frequented invitational, and now that you have a bunch of 5 and 6A schools, so the opportunity to host a meet right here in Sulphur Springs, you potentially have a lot of schools from surrounding areas that could come in.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you want good competition, because when good competition comes, others come. So, I mean, those teams want to come and compete against each other. So some of the challenges we have, I mean, we're semi-close, but we're not. Those people, I talk to the people. This is a little funny story about a young lady. It was a trainer from Lovejoy. They got off the bus. I go, how was y'all's trip? And she goes, oh, my gosh, it's so long. Well, it was like an hour and a half. You know, with us, that's a short trip for us right now, but they're used to driving 20, 30 minutes on a bus. You know, and so it was one of those kind of things. So people traveling out here, it's kind of one of those deals that, you know, they don't want to travel that far. If they can find a closer meet and it's easier for them, then that's what they'll do. It works out that way. But we got up at, 4 o'clock? I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago they got up at 4 o'clock to drive to Kaufman to run at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, our kids are kind of conditioned that. We get it. You got to travel. We got to do those things. But that's why sometimes it's hard, unless you've got really good competition coming, to lure those schools out of the Metroplex to come out here and run. So that's a challenge. Now it'll always be a challenge. He'll just have to build up a rapport of coaches and run a good meet. You have to run a good meet. If you run a good meet, too, people want to come back. We know that from all the years we've hosted a powerlifting meet. You know, I mean, we've had teams come all the way from Weatherford, girls teams coming from Weatherford to come lift in our meet. So those things, you put on some good stuff and you do it right, then people want to come back and be a part of it, and it'll grow.
Yeah, going back to your point about long trips, for those who don't know, I lived in Allen this past year, and can't lie, it was a lot of driving. So when we went to the Lovejoy game, I just drove out from Allen, and station owner and color commentator Chad Young said, "Man, what a drive!" And I just kind of laughed and said, "This was my drive every day." But yeah, so when the volleyball team plays a team like Greenville, it's a fresh air, because that's basically down the road at that point.
Oh yeah, it is. It's good stuff.
But then moving over to the tennis team before we talk about the football team, I know they play in a really tough district, playing against a lot of powerhouse programs like Hallsville, Texas High, and teams that they kind of, you know, very good programs, powerhouse programs that they kind of win 1, 2, maybe a couple of matches. But Coach Martinez talked about leading up for probably a month now. He said, Pine Tree, this is the game that will put us in or out of the playoffs, and he stressed as much this week. Yeah,
and that's good. And you're right, Texas High has always been perennial. They got a great system there inside of Texarkana. There's kids play from when they're little bitty kiddos and all the way through. They got a great program. Longview has been built kind of the same way. They have some resources there where their kids are just programmed to do that, and they have enough kids that just continue to play, and that's all they do. They just specialize on that. But we had a really good match this year against Longview. I mean, he won several games off of Longview, so that was impressive too. And we've got some young kiddos coming. He's got some younger ones in the middle school right now, so it's just those kiddos being dedicated to it. And I mean, tennis is a lot like golf. I mean, it's just a skilled sport, and you have to really refine your skill. You've got to work on hitting the ball almost every day, and it's one of those things you just can't show up out there and here we go and the best athlete's going to win. That's not the case. It's a person with the most skill, with the racket and the drive and the competitiveness to go get after it. So, and you got to be calm. It's like in golf. You got to be calm, be able to hit shots. Got to make those shots. But there's a lot of private hours that people don't see where you're just hitting balls against the board, you know, working on your stroke and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's building. It's some stuff. There's some kiddos coming. There's some excitement about them. And so, I mean, I'm happy for him and the team and everyone else, an opportunity to go to the playoffs. So that's good.
And then you mentioned golf, and for those who don't know, in case you haven't been frequenting KSST Radio's website, Coach Greg Owens did release both golf schedules for the fall seasons, and the Lady Cats golf schedule is already posted, and the men's golf is scheduled to be posted on Monday, but you can access both on ssisd.net on the athletic tabs, and so should be another great golf season. But then, Coach, let's talk about Wildcats football.
Okay.
Tough loss last night at home versus Crandall. Your team came out hot, though, to start the game. Pirates defense not having many answers for your offense early as your team jumped out to a 28-8 lead.
Well, we've faced some folks here lately, and I mean, it's tough. We're getting beat up on both sides physically and on the scoreboard and all that stuff, but things are starting to click for us. Figuring some things out, and they happened right last night. I mean, we can go back to all those other games. If this little catch happens, if this happens, that starts a drive that gets it going. Well, all that stuff last night kind of fell into place. You know, I think we've had the drops this year on receivers. I mean, my gosh, we've dropped so many footballs. It's drive killers, or it puts you in third and longs that you can't overcome because here comes the blitz, and we just can't defeat that right now. So, but it was good last night. Receivers are catching the ball. I think we had maybe 2 drops, maximum 3, I believe, on the whole night. So C.J. Williams, he had a fantastic night. It was probably, I don't know, I'm going to ask him today when I see him, but I think that was his best night as a varsity football player. I mean, we used him in the Wildcat, we used him in the slot. He was on last night. He was running after the ball, so offensive line did a great job. Defense was flying around. I mean, the overview of the whole thing, we got to score and we have the ball down in the red zone. The difference in the ball game, we give up a pick six, which is an emotional backbreaker. We give up a punt return for a touchdown, all right, and then we miss 2 field goals. I mean, those things there. But so on the other side of that, those things didn't happen with Crandall. Crandall made the plays. They didn't do that. They scored when they got in the red zone. They did those things. So we're not trading field goals and touchdowns and all that stuff. But you got to go do those things. And then the turnover was that was tough. I mean, that's a hard one right there because we are in control of the ball game and we're fresh and the emotions are good and here we go. And so those things start happening. The wheels come off just a little bit. Maybe that doubt creeps in, but they're hot too. And they got some really talented skill guys. And so, nothing against our defense. Our defense played their butts off, but everybody's putting all their skill guys on offense pretty much right now. So you've got to deal with explosive offenses, and everybody we've played has been explosive. They've got some dudes that can go. And so you just got to keep plugging, got to keep playing. You got to make the most of your opportunities, and you got to make plays when you can make them. So that's kind of the difference in the ball game in a nutshell, just as what happened. We're trading field goal attempts for touchdowns, and then we just can't give up special teams touchdowns, or we can't give up, pick sixes. So those things hurt.
And then you mentioned the pick six, which changed momentum in a big way, but down only by 9 at half after keeping pace with the Pirates. You mentioned the emotional backbreaker and the pick six, but my question was, what was the mood in the locker room after being down slightly after leading at one point?
It's good. I mean, they came in, they're positive. I mean, they understand. I mean, they got some positive feedback. Good things were happening. Defense is stopping them. They're hitting them in the mouth. Offensively, things are happening and clicking. Here's a little problem here. Here's one there. Again, number 7, number 9, those dudes can play. I mean, they got some fantastic outside linebacker, defensive end guys. They're really good with that stuff, and they're skilled guys in the back. One's a really good player. So those guys are there, and I thought our staff did a good job of finding stuff that's open. I mean, things we'd game plan for, it was there. The Wildcat stuff worked great. So there was a lot of positive energy. Yeah, they know, let's go. It's our game. We can go take this ball game if we want it. So those are the emotions and the investment and all that stuff that they had. So at the end of the ball game, yeah, it's a district game because we've been preaching all year, hey, this is the second season. It's still not over. I mean, so there's still those emotions of a teenage kiddo that are just, up and down. It's like, it's the end of the world. It's not, but you invest so much in it, it means something to you. So there, again, a lot of emotions at the end of the ball game. But at halftime, your original question there, that they were positive. They were good. I mean, upbeat. We're a little down. We're sitting there looking at Carson Fenton, who had tweaked his knee, so he's sitting over there. So, yeah, we're a little alarmed about all that. But other than that, everybody else seemed to be good and they're positive, and coaches are making adjustments. And here we go, second half.
And then your offense, like last Friday in Kaufman, got the ball in their first drive in the second half and went on a 10-play, 7-minute drive that unfortunately for your squad ended with a field goal. And you mentioned cashing in the red zone becoming something of an issue, but is this something that you and your team talk about each week as more games wear on?
Just meaning putting the ball in the end zone. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's your goal every time. I mean, every time it's the score. So we don't make a big deal about where it's at all the time, because I think it's kind of like that deal. If you're always harping on a guy shooting free throws, you just put more pressure on him. We don't talk about, hey, you got to score, you got to score. No, you got to execute the play called. You got to take care of your job. So that's the thing. We still continue to preach. I've said that to you probably since the first show, and that's my challenge all week from this week was play this play. So Thursday night, I mean, it was all three of our teams this week, our ninth grade, our JV, and our varsity. It's all about the little detailed stuff. It's about us executing the details, us being mentally strong. I go back to the Kaufman game week before. I know Matt Young was here with you last week, but I go back to that ball game. We're going down here, we're fixing to score, and then we lose our mind. We get a personal foul, that backs us up 15. Well, that puts you in a bind already. So now it takes us out of field goal range. Now we're trying to gain back yardage to even get a field goal. So those things just kind of deflate your sails. You've got to stay poised. You got to play this play. you got to execute that play. And so that's what we've been harping on. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if we're going to a break right now or not, but I can get into some offensive, defensive stuff, some kiddos that are doing some good stuff. We're improving. All right, but we still got to make the big play. We still got to make those things happen, and we did more of that last night. I mean, there were some big balls to Weston Fields. He made some balls. Landon Fields made some big catches. CJ made big catches. Matthew threw the ball well. Overall for most of the part, but their players had some problems too. Their number 9 gave us fits. I mean, I don't know how tall that kid is, 6'6", 6'7". You're trying to throw over top of him. That's going to adjust your angle of your ball. Number 7. I don't know. Matt's telling me this morning, Matt Young, he said 7, every big play we almost hit, he's the one that disrupts it. He's the guy that gets the pick. He's the guy that knocks down with Carson in the end zone. He's the guy that's covering the middle and stopping our RPO play right down the seam too again. So he's the guy disrupting all that stuff. So a lot of our game plan was to go away from him. But they keep adjusting him over. They end up putting him on top of CJ pretty much all night long. So that was their plan with him, move him around. So that gave us problems. But up front, the positive side up front with the offensive line, we had time to throw the ball. I mean, there was a pocket there. We weren't scrambling. Those guys are cleaning things up. They're doing a great job up there of doing that with pass pro, being more physical. Jacoby and Sean and Josh Sutton inside, those guys were giving great push. Our 2 inexperienced tackles right now fought their tails off and had really good nights there. So, I mean, that was Hodges and West. I mean, those guys did a great job. And, our peanut little running backs right now, those guys found the creases last night. I mean, they were coming out of there. They were running. They did a fantastic job of doing. That's Malachi Rowland and J.J. Hall. Just did a super night of finding creases, being patient, and then gashing them and hitting them and going. So, I think we rushed for over 200 last night. So, I mean, we've got to establish that run and do those things, which opens up the pass. So all that stuff just feeds off each other, which we talked about in week 1 as well. But those things started to happen. Those things happened more frequently last night than they did in some other ball games. So, I mean, we're getting better. We want to win. We need to win, bottom line. But our kids are improving. They're getting better. And it's our job as coaches to show them that and show us where we still got to get better and still have to make some plays and do some things there.
Thank you so much, Coach Young. And when we return from a commercial break, we'll continue talking about this homecoming match last night versus the Crandall Pirates and then move over to next Friday's game in Innis versus the Lions. Welcome back to the September 18th edition of the Coaches Show. I'm your sports director at KSST, Ross Lubinsky, and joining me is Wildcats football head coach and athletic director of SSISD, Greg Owens. And Coach Owens, before we went to commercial, you were talking about the running game, and you talked about how your team got over 200 yards on the ground. It's your second straight game doing so. And talked with Coach Young on Wednesday during the week, and talked about Malachi Rowland's output, and just what have you seen from your running back committee the last 2 weeks that you've liked?
They're starting to understand the concepts. I mean, Malachi's a sophomore, so he's not played at this level, but he's very naturally instinctive about seeing creases and cutting and going. He's a very explosive young man. Now, he's not very big. All right, but he is fast and he is explosive. So those are some things that are great for him. But even those 2 guys on short yardage are doing a fantastic job of understanding we need to go get 2 yards, even though they're not very big guys. That they still go and get the yardage. So they've been tough runners, physical runners. Both of them have limped off the field. It seemed like every ball game, with something, and they're just kind of nursing some little nagging injuries they're just having to deal with. So both of them are extremely tough guys. JJ's messing with his shoulder. Malachi's got a knee that he tweaks every week. I mean, he just gets bruised up and beat up a little bit. So those are things that bother him. But they come back and they go to work the next week and they're ready to roll again. And both of them are extremely competitive. I mean, they are just competitors now. They want to win. They want to go. They want to get it. And I think you can see that in their play. I think you can see how passionate and how they don't dilly-dally around. They put their foot in the ground and they go. It's not this guy that's going to juke you all day. They don't do that. So they go, and that's a big benefit to those guys of doing that. And JJ is a thicker guy. JJ's more of a I don't know if instinctive is the right word, but he just feels where he feels an opening, he goes. He just takes it. So and where he's dangerous, that he's the guy that may cut it all the way out the back door on you. So a defense coordinator's nightmare. He's supposed to be running the play over here, and you have some of those kids that are black and white. It's programmed. I've got to run to the 8 hole, and that's it. They don't look for nothing else. Well, JJ, he's going to go in the general right direction, and then after that, hey, it's whatever. JJ's just loose, okay? And so, but he feels it. But most of the time, it's the right cut. It's the right feel. And he doesn't predetermine in his mind what he's going to do. So those are really the really good running backs that can do that. It's a feel for those guys, and they understand what they're doing. And the other thing about JJ, he runs north and south. So when he puts his foot in the ground also, he is going. And he'll cut it all the way back to grain. And he's a strong guy now. He's a powerful young man. He's not very tall, but I'm telling you, he's a powerful cat. And he's hard to bring down. So you got a smaller body. I mean, he's a bowling ball type guy that can run through tackles. And you better be ready to get after it, because he's going to put his foot in the ground. You can't arm tackle him. So, again, feisty fighter, competitive, emotional player. You know, I mean, he takes every game seriously and emotionally. You know, so if it doesn't go well, I mean, it hurts him because it means a lot to him. So those guys have done a great job for us, and both those guys too, they've done a fantastic job at pass protection. Smaller guys, and you know they're picking up blitzing linebackers. They're doing those things, so they've done what Coach Wallace's asked them to do, and that they just continue to get better. We just got to keep them healthy. But I've been impressed. They both can catch the football coming out of the backfield. We continue to work on that weekly. That's a big part of our game, a screen game. We want to do some throwback stuff with those guys, just swings out of the backfield. So that just gives you one more dimension and one more outlet that linebackers have to deal with and open some things up. So impressed with those guys and what they've been doing, and again, their toughness and all that. So that they've really aided. And again, bragging on the offensive line last night, moving guys. The passing game was there. The Fields boys were making catches, you know, doing a great job. The other guys are going to stretch us. We haven't hit the big one really with those guys yet. We're close. We've got to go win some of those one-on-one balls. And Matthew threw a great fade to Weston, and their DB just made a great play, you know. But we want to see Weston climb and go up and get the thing. And again, CJ was really good underneath on some stuff there. And our tight ends have been big for us this year too. Those things have opened up with those guys. Luke Caton, you got Fenton, and then I've gone blank on
Matthew Clark.
Matthew Clark. All right, Matthew. So Matthew was throwing it. You know, he's doing. So you got Fenton as D-line, you got Matthew Clark's the D-line guy, you got Caton's a linebacker, so those guys are doing defensive duty, offensive duty, you know, they're just having to be old school warriors, you know, just go get it, go play here, and we rotate them in on offense, and with two of those guys down right now, then it all fell on Matthew. So Clark had to suck it up, and so I'm looking at him, here he comes, we got to go kick off return. Matthew, can you go? You know, gives me a glazed look. I can do it. Okay, well, here we go. So he's on punt. He's on special teams. He's doing it all, too. So, I mean, he was pulled into more action last night than he's been in. So I'm proud of him and his effort. And, man, he did a super job of doing that, too. So it's just a combination of all that stuff. Everybody's having to step in and chip in. And, you know, another kiddo goes down far right before halftime last night. And so we're having to makeshift and move a couple of kids around to help us on some more special teams. So it's just they're just having to be warriors and play a full game and play every special team, and we're just thin across the board. We're just thin with the big bodies and the guys we have, especially linemen, D linemen, and linebacker type guys. So those are things we're really trying to find some depth in.
And going back to running backs real quick in the running game, Coach Young talked about efficiency during the weekend. What were your thoughts on your running backs' efficiency last night versus Crandall?
I don't know. I mean, they did what we asked them to do. I guess it was good. I don't really know how to answer that question, to be honest with you. I mean, there was no negatives. They're not running backwards. They took care of the football, you know, and big runs. I mean, so. And those guys, they're not selfish. I mean, they're unselfish guys. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter. You pull one guy got us to the one, he pulls him out because he's gassed. The next one goes in. They're as happy for the other guys they are themselves. So, I mean, that's another. We had that a couple years ago with some kiddos too. This kid pulled himself out of the game because he wanted this kid to go score because he ain't got to score this year. You know, so that's kind of the way they are with each other too. You know, it's a committee thing. It's all about the team deal. Here we go. Everybody jump in there. So that's good with them. So I guess we checked the efficiency box. I don't know what Matt's specific goals were for the running back efficiency this week, but anyway, I say it's a check. So they did a good job. And
then last thing about two last things about the running game. We did mention Douglas Deloney last night in the game, and you mentioned pass blocking, and he continues to be a very pivotal part, staying in the backfield and providing pass protection for Matthew Mitchell or whoever the quarterback is.
Yeah, he's got to get better at that. He of the three, he's the worst one of the three, a pass pro. But he's the big train. I call him the choo-choo train, all right, the big bus. But anyway. His thing with Doug is a powerful. He doesn't realize how powerful he is. He's fast and he's powerful, but it takes him a little while to get going. The other two guys, they're little race cars. I mean, they're just little. I mean, they hit the gas and they're 0 to 60 now. Douglas, it takes him a little bit like a big train, but when he gets to rolling, it's a big deal. So he sticks his foot in the ground and can get going downhill. He had some really good runs last night. He finished them physical. But we are challenging him in the pass pro. He's got to step up a little bit more with his big body and give us some more work in there. But again, he can catch the ball. He can run. There's a powerfulness about him, that's there. I want him to be more urgent. He's got to go, but and he's got to be more decisive. When he sticks it. He's not a natural, instinctive guy like those guys. He's more of an on-the-track, kind of run it right here. The hole needs to be there. But we're trying to get him lined up and downhill in a hurry so he can use his body and go forward. So he's improving as well. He's starting an outside linebacker playing there, and he's on special teams also. So he's getting the full gamut. Everybody's getting a dose of it all.
And then you mentioned earlier C.J. Williams in the Wildcat formation, and he continues to be a big piece of your offense, and mentioned several Wildcat formations, putting the wide receiver behind center and one going for 6.
Yeah. I mean, he's another dimension. He's a very athletic young man. Growing up, he played quarterback, so he's in and out quarterback all the time, and so he's handled the ball ever since he's been in the 7th grade and maybe before then. So he understands. So in the Wildcat too, there's a dimension where he can throw the ball. So he can throw the ball too. So he just adds to that a little bit. So where'd the Wildcat come from? Well, it's been in the game plan for a while, but now with Brady dinged up just a little bit, the second quarterback in our mix, and him and Mitchell in and out, CJ's kind of always been our third guy. Well, he's getting now some more reps and some of that stuff. And really, when we do that, Matthew can go play receiver, Brady can go play receiver. So you leave your personnel on the field, and you're not giving your hand away immediately, and they're not subbing some guys in. So it gives you an element of surprise a little bit too. So it's nice to leave the same personnel on the field and then go do what you got to do with them. But he's a guy we got to get touches to. You saw his athleticism last night. You see how hard he runs. He's had an issue with catching the football this year consistently, but last night, he was on fire last night with catching. And now at Wildcat too, you just find another way for him to touch it again, so he can use his athleticism and move the chains and those kind of things. He did a fantastic job on the goal line. We're doing some stretch read stuff where he's going again the middle of the field. It's short yardage stuff. Really, Matt got in it I think most of the time at 3rd and 5 or less, and he's going forward and he's able to pull it. So we're giving to one of those little quick guys going across. You got to make a decision, or we're going to pull it, and we're going to give it to the bigger kid right here going downhill because he's 190 pounds, and he runs a 4.6, high 4.5. So the kid's an athletic kiddo. We got to get the ball to him, and then that's in the game plan. So I don't know. I think he had 7 touches like in the first quarter maybe. So that's big. We got to keep feeding him. He's a big part of what we're doing.
And before. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll finish wrapping up talking about the homecoming match last night versus the Crandall Lions, and then move forward to our preview next Friday versus the Ennis Lions. And welcome back to the September 18th edition of the Coaches Show. Joining me today is Wildcats football head coach and athletic director Greg Owens as we're discussing the homecoming loss last night versus the Crandall Pirates. And I'd like to talk about the defense before we move over to next Friday's game in Ennis. The first half, your defense was able to force a crucial 3-and-out and put your team in a position to give the Wildcats a 2-possession lead, which y'all did cash in on, to go ahead 20-8. And another big stop was the muff snap at the 1-yard line in the third quarter, which gave your offense the ball in your own 1 and prevented the Pirates from getting points on that drive.
Yeah, defense started great. They did a great job. Again, Crandall's got some skilled guys that are tough to deal with, and I thought our defense played well, extremely, early. Talking to Coach McCain this morning, hey, we played with a lot of energy. kids just got tired. We just got worn down. We got tired, and again, that's just the wear and tear of a ball game. They had kids playing both ways too, but that's just kind of what happened to us. It kind of wore on us in some areas, and they started going no huddle and got us out of it just a little bit. And again, they had some freaky guys in some key spots for them that made big time plays. Seven takes the one and just tiptoes right down the sideline. I mean, he's a big man rolling. So we didn't tackle as well. Now, is that because we're tired? Is that because we're not focused? Is that because we're not? I don't know. But I mean, their athleticism. I mean, all the above maybe. But we got to do a better job of tackling. So open field tackle stuff is where we're kind of struggling a little bit right now. And really, it turns into guys just stopping their feet, not keeping their feet moving and continuing to go. So, but there were still some big plays. There was still some good stuff that happened. And again, it's just about getting stops. When I played, it was all about, we had all these goals. We're going to hold them under 100 yards rushing. We're going to hold them under 200 yards total offense. We're going to have shutouts. We're going to do all this stuff. And today's football, that's so hard to do unless you're so gifted athletically, because people, matchups, the game, the tempo. I mean, the trick formation, all the stuff you have with throwing the football, the way people are throwing it now, RPO stuff. I mean, it's a nightmare. I mean, it's a defense coordinator's nightmare when you got somebody. And last night, one of the most athletic guys on their team was their quarterback, number 3. So all of a sudden they spread you out. You're trying to cover this up, and then they start running quarterback draw on us. All right. So now you got to start packing them back in the box. So I mean, they're a really good football team with some talented skill guys. So they're not going to go up there and just run people down with their old line and just mash you, but they got enough people that can move the ball around and put you in a bind, and then they can get some matchups with some guys, and that's what they did to us. And then they threw tempo on it, and we're head spinning a little bit, and so we're trying to get everybody lined up, and we're tired. So that's some of the stuff that kind of happened to us and got worn down a little bit. But they played their butt off. Our kids played their tail off the whole ball game. They battled, made plays, So I'm proud of our effort. We wanted to win. You go back to how I kind of started this whole thing was the details. Even from every ball game, it's all about the details of making that play. And we got to learn to live in the moment of one play. I got some emotional kiddos that ride this roller coaster. They're here, then they're down here, then they're up here. We got to work on being consistent emotionally. All right, and play this play right here, this down as hard as I can, and don't worry about the last one. We want to worry about what happened a while ago. You can't worry about that one. It's over. I can't change it. So we got to live in the moment, and I can't worry about the 10 plays from now. I got to go now. And so that's what we're trying to get on. Hey, just play this one. Line up, read your key, get your tail down, and play ball, as hard as you possibly can. And sometimes we're going to lose the battle just because they're better or they make a play, and that stuff happens. But you also have an opportunity to make great plays. And so that's on both sides of the ball. So those are the challenges. Those are the things we got to get their mind refocused back up on this week with a tough opponent. And next opponent coming up is Ennis, and Ennis has been rolling. He's got it going. I think they're doing it last year with the quarterback and the receivers and all that kind of stuff. A lot of those guys graduated. Now they're kind of hanging their hat on their offensive line and a running game. So this is more of a running attack that's going to come at you. They've got a very strong defense. Their defensive front, those guys are some big dudes now. I mean, they can play. And so they've been holding people. So we got to figure out ways to get them in a bind, get them in unbalance, do whatever, and figure out our game plan today and tomorrow and start attacking them this week and figuring out how to go get after those guys. I don't know, the score, 28-0 against Greenville, I think was their score. So they've kind of been rolling, and they beat Waxahachie, got a new head coach. Waxahachie won last night, got their first district win, and so that they beat some people. So we'll watch the video, we'll study them up, we'll kind of get ready for Sam Harrell's crew and see what we got. Also in the district that's interesting, Royce City defeated Corsicana. Corsicana's been rolling. Royce City struggles. So you don't really know. We're still living in a COVID world, so you don't really know how to evaluate all these games of who they're playing. You don't know how strong some opponents are. You don't know who's lost kids. So, Crandall last 2 weeks had 19 kids out in the program. So now you kind of come back, okay, well, now they're back to full strength, so here they are again. So there's a lot of that stuff you just look at, you just don't really know, and you can't put a whole lot into each game necessarily unless you know who's in it and who's out and, that kind of stuff. So that's the world we're all living in. And what other game we got? It was Greenville, Forney defeated North Forney. which has been a flip. The North Forney's been the one on top in that matchup for a long time over there, and so now that kind of changed. So Forney played Texas High to a very close game 2 weeks ago. So Forney's kind of got some things turned around, and they're moving forward and progressing over there too. So it's going to be it's a challenging district. It always is. And we started the year saying that it's going to be one. Guys are coached up and players, and so you got to just strap it up every week and go get after it and get ready. So by no sense is our season over. Are we out of the play? This is one ball game. So, but we got to start stacking things up, continue to get better, and we got to start getting some district wins though.
Anything else you'd like to add, Coach?
No, proud of our kiddos. I mean, I'm proud of the way they fought. They got after it. They didn't quit. Yeah, we're disappointed. Yes, we're hurt. Yes, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but we can't live in that world. Here's where we are. What are we going to do? How are you going to answer today? Let's go. So they had 24 hours, sleep on it. We'll bring them back in and let them, show them the video, and then we'll move on to Ennis, and that's kind of, what are you teaching? We're teaching life lessons. You just can't quit and lay down in life. You got to keep fighting. You got to keep going, and hey, here's the next challenge we've got. So suck it up and go. None of us like it. We don't like our record right now. We don't like anything about all that stuff. So we can mope and pout and be sad all week or whatever, or we can go get back to work and say, okay, here's our next challenge. Again, I can't change anything about that stuff. I'm worried about Ennis now, so that's all I can try to control.
And thank you so much for joining us today on this
Sir.
September 18th edition of the Coaches Show here on KSST. As a forward warning, next Friday's game in Ennis versus the Lions, KSST will not be live streaming that game, but it will be broadcasted onto KSST 12:30 a.m. That game next Friday is set to kick off at 7:30 p.m. But again, thank you, Coach Owens, for coming to be on the Coaches Show here on September 18th.
Do y'all still do replays on Sunday night?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, all right, okay.
And that'll about do it for us here on the Coaches Show. I'm your sports director, Ross Levinsky. Shooting video is Doug Haston. Station manager for today and last night as well is Matt Jansen, with James Terry out recently. And thank you so much again for Coach Owens joining me this morning. I know it's always a quick turnaround going from a football game, getting a couple hours of sleep, and being on this Coaches Show, but we always appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And that'll do it for us.